Hello students, today I am going to discuss about the Pratiharas, an important regional power in early medieval India. The Gurjara Pratiharas, also known as the Pratiharas, were one of the leading political powers of this period. According to nationalist historian R.C. Majumdar, they were among the several dynasties that made their mark in the post-Gupta Empire period, that is, after the breakup of the Gupta Empire. This dynasty was founded by a Brahmana named Hari Chandra in the area around Jodhpur in Rajasthan. Several houses of the Gurjaras, who were considered to be of non-indigenous origin, gradually got absorbed in the Indian society and made their presence felt in the western part of northern India in and around 7th century CE. One of the early Gurjara chiefs is known to have opposed King Harshavardhana, and he gained much distinction from this act. During the post-Harshavardhana period, the Gurjara Pratiharas emerged as a powerful regional force who revived two things. One, the dream of an unified India with its center at northern India, that is the upper Gangetic plain. And number two, they also geared India's defense against Muslim invaders, specifically the Arab invaders. Now, coming to the origins of this royal house. Historians have often described the Pratiharas to be of uncertain social origin associated with the Huns or with the Gurjara pastoralists of Rajasthan. In fact, the antecedents of the Gurjara Pratiharas is highly debated. The meaning of the word Pratihara, that is the literal meaning of the word, is doorkeepers. The enemy of the Pratiharas, the Rashtrakutas, has pointed out that the Pratiharas were actually doorkeepers, thus indicating a low social origin of this royal family. According to the epigraphic evidences, the Pratiharas were claimed to be the descendants of the epic hero Lakshmana of the great Ramayana, who belonged to the Surya Vangsha or the solar race. Both the early Jodhpur house and the imperial Pratiharas, they had a common tradition that their name Pratihara came from the fact that Lakshmana once acted as a doorkeeper to his elder brother Rama. Association of the Pratiharas with the Huns have also been explained by historians in the following way, that the Gurjaras were a nomadic Central Asian tribe who entered India along with the Huns when the Huns attacked India. However, while the indigenous origin of this house have been emphasized by nationalist historian R.C. Majumdar or Dasharath Sharma, historians like Vincent Smith, D.R. Vandarkar, Prabodh Chandra Bagchi have identified the Gurjaras to be of foreign origin. Continuing with the debate on the origin of this house, Gurjaras have also been recognized as the name of a land and not that of a people, although in early India, the common practice was that the name of the people was generally given to the land rather than the name of the land to that of the people. The Gurjaras and the Pratiharas have also been identified to belong to two different tribal groups or to different families. Again, the Pratiharas have been identified to be a clan of the Gurjara tribe. The modern Gurjars who inhabit northwestern Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Uttar Pradesh may represent their descendants. It has been suggested by Ramila Thapar that perhaps they belong to a group of administrators, a kind of officials who rose to power, a pattern which was quite common at this point of time in early medieval Indian history. In support of the origin of the Gurjara Pratiharas, 2 points have been raised. In some inscriptions, there is a mention of Gurjara Brahmanas. If the Gurjara Pratiharas were foreigners, then the term Brahmana would not have been associated with their racial name. Secondly, the kings of this dynasty have linked their ancestry to Lakshmana, as I have already mentioned, the epic hero of Ramayana. Several Gurjara Pratihara kings have described themselves as Kshatriyas belonging to the Raghuvansha. So there is more emphasis on the indigenous origin of the Gurjara Pratihara house. Now, about the coming to power of this regional house. The Gurjara Pratiharas established their presence in early medieval northern India along the second quarter of the 18th century. That is, they made their mark during this period. However, this royal house ruled from in and around 6th century till the 11th century, when the house was completely destroyed. Their most important kingdom was founded in the heart of Rajputana near Jodhpur, and gradually it advanced towards the south and occupied Avanti. By the early 8th century, one of the Gurjara branches became so much powerful that they occupied Ujjain, a most important urban and political center of Malwa. Among the illustrious kings of this royal lineage, we can find Nagabhatta I, the Vatsya Raja, Nagabhatta II, and Bhoja I or Mihira Bhoja. The other contemporary regional powers of this time were the Rashtrakutas, the Palas, and the Pratiharas, and all these three houses shared a relationship of constant friction, the main target being possession of the imperial city of Kanauj. The Pratihara kings ruled, as I have said, ruled actually from 6th century till the 11th century CE. Harichandra, the founder of the Pratihara house, as goes by the inscriptions and by several accounts, he is supposed to have two wives, one Brahmana and the other Kshatriya. It is learned from several sources that the Kshatriya wife had 4 sons who built up 4 separate kingdoms, and the main centers of which were at Jodhpur, Nandipura, Broj, Ujjain, and the nearby areas. Now, directly coming to the lineage of this house. The first important king is Nagabhatta I, c. 730 to 760 CE. Nagabhatta I is described as a fierce enemy of the Mlecchas who remained outside the orbit of the caste society. Though actually who these Mlecchas were never clearly defined in any of the inscriptions. The Mlecchas mentioned in Gwalior inscription perhaps refers to the Arabs who attacked India under the generalship of Junaid. This has reference to the Arabs occupying Sindh. Nagabhatta I defeated the Arab army under Junaid during the Caliphate campaigns in India. Nagabhatta I also achieved remarkable success against the later Arab generals and administrators. We can learn about this from the accounts of Arab historian Biladuri Khalifa Hassan. Nagabhatta's control extended over parts of Malwa, Rajputana, and Gujarat. He thus established an empire which spread from Gwalior to Gujarat. And not only that, he constantly resisted the Arabs from coming beyond Sindh or proceeding more eastwards from Sindh. Nagabhatta I also fought against the Rashtrakuta king Danti Durga, but he was unfortunately defeated by Danti Durga, who was more powerful militarily. Danti Durga not only defeated Nagabhatta I, but he occupied Ujjain, and there in the city of Ujjain, he performed a very elaborate ritual, a sacrifice which is known as the Hiranyo Garbhodana Yajna. And while conducting this yajna, Dontidurga made the Pratihara king to act as a doorkeeper of the palace. And from that time onwards, the Rashtrakutas had considered the Pratiharas to be a race of doorkeepers, as they often claimed. However, it was a common practice with the Rashtrakutas that once they established their supremacy, they retired back to the Deccan. And in case of Dontidurga also, this happened. So, Nagabhatta I had ample opportunity to consolidate his position and left for his successors a fairly large empire. The second important king of this royal house was Vatsya, who ruled from c. 780 to 800 CE. Vatsya was a very powerful ruler and a very ambitious one as such. He not only consolidated his position and he reoccupied Ujjain and made Ujjain his capital. He was trying to define the outline of an imperial rule in Western India. Vatsya's ambitious policy of expansion brought him into conflict with the Palas of Bengal and the Rashtrakutas of Deccan, specifically with King Dharmapala and the Rashtrakuta king Dhruva III. The series of confrontations between these three powers came to be known as the Tripartite struggle, and the Rashtrakutas, in course of the struggle, proved to be militarily strong than both their adversaries, and Dhruva III defeated both Vatsya and Dharmapala. It is mentioned in several epigraphic sources that before being overpowered by Dhruva, Vatsya has extended his control over Kanauj, and he has removed Chakrayudha, who was a protege of Dharmapala, from the throne of Kanauj and placed Indraraja on that throne. But there is some sort of confusion regarding the chronology of events, regarding the dates. Nagabhatta II was the third important ruler of the Gurjara Pratihara royal house. He ruled from c. 800 to 836 CE. He succeeded Vatsya and he was determined to regain the lost power and prestige of this house. He followed two policies. One, extending his domination over Rajasthan and the neighboring areas by following an aggressive military policy. Number two, by building up a political coalition. Within a very short period, he conquered almost entire Rajasthan, Malwa, and North Gujarat. It is mentioned in the Gwalior inscription praising Nagabhatta II that the rulers of Andhra, Sindh, Vidarbha, and Kalinga surrendered to him. Not only that, the rulers of the kingdoms situated between the Rashtrakuta and the Pala dominions accepted a coalition under the leadership of Nagabhatta II. Obviously, this enhanced his strength and increased his power. The Rashtrakutas were, however, not happy with the rise of Nagabhatta II. Govinda III, one of the most powerful monarch of the Rashtrakuta house, progressed against the Pratihara king and defeated him. Dharmapala and his protege on the throne of Kanauj, Chakrayudha, surrendered to Govinda III. Govinda III also overpowered Nagabhatta II's allies like the rulers of Vidarbha and Kalinga. Thus, the power of the Pratihara king was curbed to a great extent. But he was not ousted from his kingdom. Perhaps Govinda III wanted the presence of the Pratihara monarch in order to act as a buffer against the upcoming power of the Palas. So this was a kind of a power game that was going on between these three houses, and each of the powers had their own contribution to make in this power game. According to the Gwalior Prashasti, Nagabhatta II later recovered Malwa. Not only that, he defeated the rulers of North Gujarat, Kirat, Batsha, Matsya, and his empire spread from the Himalayas in the north to Malwa in the south. Perhaps this Gwalior Prashasti has some degree of exaggeration, but it is undeniable that Nagabhatta II built up a very large kingdom which included parts of Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, as well as Bihar. Kanauj became a center of the Pratihara power, and unfortunately, Nagabhatta II's successor, Ramabhadra, was an incapable ruler who was defeated by the Pala king, Devapala, and the Gurjara Pratiharas lost quite some part of their territory. The fourth and the most important king of the Gurjara Pratiharas was Bhoja I, or Mihira Bhoja, who ruled approximately between c. 836 and 885 CE. He is the best known Gurjara Pratihara king, a grandson of Nagabhatta II. He, after ascending the throne around 836, he had a long reign of more than 46 years. His earliest inscription, the Bada copper plate of this date, was issued from a Skandavahara, or a royal camp of victory at Mahodaya. Mahodaya is identified with Kanauj. Bhojo, in the initial stage of his career, was defeated by the Rashtrakutas, the Palas, and the Kalachuris. But very soon he reorganized himself, he consolidated his position, and made a very good comeback. He could restore all the territories that he had inherited from his predecessors and further increased those territories. Coming to the conquests of Bhoja I. Number one, we must talk about the conquest of Bundelkhand. During the reign of his father, Ramabhadra, the king of Bundelkhand announced his independence. As a result, the charity given by Nagabhatta II in Kalanjara Mandala could not be continued. Mihira Bhoja restarted this process, which indicates that he had once again reoccupied Bundelkhand. King Jayashakti of Bundelkhand perhaps accepted his overlordship, in all probability. Number two, conquest of Rajasthan. Baraho, Daulatpura, and Kahala inscriptions refer to the fact that Mihira Bhoja brought extensive areas of Rajputana under his control. Kakkata of the Mandasur branch of the Pratiharas, a Shamanto of Nagabhatta II, had declared independence. Now, at one point of time, this Kakkata has fought against the Palas in Gaura or Bengal. His son Bahuko has also participated in such war. At this point of time, both Kakkata and Bahuko, they claimed independent status. However, Mihira Bhoja could very soon bring all these insubordinate feudatories under his control, as is mentioned in the Pratapgarh inscription. This inscription also confirms Mahabhoja's dominance over southern part of Rajasthan. Jaipur inscriptions mentions Harsha Guila, who had gifted many horses to Mihira Bhoja. Next, we must talk about his conquest of Punjab. Kalhana's Raj Tarangini and the Pahewa inscriptions relate that Karnal, which was situated in the eastern part of Punjab, was occupied by Mihira Bhoja. But when he was involved in his confrontations in the eastern part of India, specifically in Bengal, again the king of Kashmir, Shankaravarman, could occupy these areas, and Mihira Bhoja had to accept this situation. There were also some conquests in central India. The inscriptions found at Gwalior and Deoghar point out that Jhansi and Gwalior were governed by the representatives of Mihira Bhoja. War with the Rashtrakutas. Rashtrakuta king Amogha Varsho and Krishna II were contemporaries of Mihira Bhoja. The Pratihara king, being more powerful than Amogha Varsho, could occupy Kanauj, and he extended his empire up to river Narmada. The battle between the Rashtrakutas and the Pratiharas continued for several years, and it is known from several sources that even during the last years of the rule of Mihira Bhoja, there were several such confrontations. Then there was also war with the Palas. King Devapala was another contemporary of Mihira Bhoja. The time frame of such confrontations between Mihira Bhoja and Devapala creates certain confusions. Probably it was at the beginning of his reign that Mihira Bhoja ultimately overpowered Devapala, as indicated by several sources, and specifically by the Gwalior Prashasti. Devapala perhaps recovered his position later, as mentioned in the pillar inscription of Bhatto Guraba Mishra. After Devapala's death, his weak successor could not combat the forces of Mihira Bhoja, and Mihira Bhoja had no difficulty in extending his supremacy in northern and central India and also in parts of eastern India. Thus, Bhoja I happened to be one of the most powerful monarchs of the Pratihara dynasty. A 9th century Arab account on India attributed to the merchant Suleiman refers to the great military power and riches of a king named Zurz, or who is identified with Mihira Bhoja. He was appreciated by the Arab author for keeping his kingdom free from the robbers. Al-Masudi, another Arab traveler, called Mihira Bhoja King Baura. According to the Arabs, the Pratiharas had the best cavalry in India. Mihira Bhoja was a devotee of Vishnu, and he adorned the title of Adi Baraha. He was not only an able conqueror, but he was also a patron of art and literature, and he took good care of his subjects. The next important king of this house was Mahendrapala, who ruled from c. 885 to 910 CE. Under Mahendrapala's rule, the Pratihara Empire retained its old glory. Mahendrapala further annexed Magadha, parts of northern Bengal, and the empire reached in the west up to the Sindh, in the east up to Bengal, in the north up to the Himalayas, and in the south up to river Narmada. Mahendrapala confronted the king of Kashmir, but he was defeated by him and had to give away some of his territories. He took the title of Maharajadhiraja of Arjavarta. Eminent poet, dramatist and critic Rajasekhara adorned his court. Rajasekhara wrote Karpura Manjari in Shaurasheni Prakrit in order to please his accomplished wife Avanti Sundari. Perhaps Rajasekhara is the first among the early poets to acknowledge the contribution of his wife towards his creative writing. Apart from Karpura Manjari, he also wrote Kabya Mimamsa, Vidhashala Bhanjika, Balaramayana, and Prapancha Pandava, and several other texts. after the death of Mahendrapala, there was a war of succession among his successors, as a result of which the power of the Pratiharas became very weak, and they were considerably becoming sort of defocused. Now, coming to the decline of the Pratiharas, Mahendrapala was followed by Mohipala in c. 913. Mohipala was completely defeated by the Rashtrakuta monarch Indra III, who devastated the city of Kannauj, and Gujarat passed into the hands of the Rashtrakutas. And according to Al-Masudi, the Pratiharas at this point of time had no access to the sea. During the rule of Rajyapala, another Pratihara ruler, Rashtrakuta king Krishna III invaded North India and defeated the Pratihara king. Then Jashpala, who ruled from c. 1024 to 1036 CE, was the last ruler of this dynasty. If we summarize the causes of the decline of the Pratihara house, we can identify that there was the reason of the repeated invasions of the Rashtrakuta, which drained the wealth and resources of the Pratiharas. There was also confrontation with the Palas in connection with the Tripartite struggle. Then there was the clause of the Declaration of Independence by the feudatories and the provincial governors. Finally, the Pratiharas were wiped off the political map by the Ghaznavids in 11th century CE. They were followed by some powerful states in central and western India, like the Chahamanas or the Chauhans in Rajasthan, the Chalukyas or the Solankis in Gujarat, and the Paramars or the Pawars in Malwa. Coming to the administrative system of the Pratiharas. Here, the monarch enjoyed the supreme position and the highest administrative post, adorned with the titles like Parameshwar, Maharaja Dhiraj, Param Bhattaraka, and he was supported in his work by higher officials like the Kottapala, Tantropala, Dandopashika, Dandonayaka, Dutaka, Bhongika, and so on. The state was divided into Bhukti, Mandal, and several cities and villages. The details of the Pratihara administration would be dealt with in a separate lecture. Coming to the society and the economy of the Pratiharas, caste system was very much prevalent in the social order. The inscriptions referred to the Brahmanas as the Vipras, and several Prakrit terms are used for the Kshatriyas. Chaturveda and Vattas were the main Brahmana groups. Among the Vaishyas, there were the Kanchuka and the Vakata groups. According to the Arab writer Ibda Khurdabab, there were 7 castes during this period. Now, what were these castes? At the beginning, there were the Sava Kufriya. From the Sava Kufriya, there came the kings or the rulers. After that, there were the Brahmanas. Then the Katariyas, probably the Kshatriyas. Then the Sudariyas, probably the Shudras. And apart from them, there were the Bandalia, the Labla, and so on. There were also the Chandalas and the Lahuda, or the wandering tribes. And apart from them, we can find that the practice of intercaste marriage was also there, and such intercaste marriages happened between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. In this context, we can say that the caste system was not really that rigid during this time. Polygamy and the practice of sati was also there, but it was not very prominent. Another interesting feature of this time is that the Hindus forcibly converted to Islam could be brought back to the fold of their original religion by performing some specific rituals and ceremonies. This was definitely a new feature in the social order of the time. Economy was based on agriculture mainly. Major source of government revenue was from agricultural productions. Use of money is indicated in several inscriptions pointing towards a regular monetary exchange system. Internal and overseas trade was also there. There is reference to hattas or hatto, which was a kind of a market, and also mondopikas, which is another type of market. However, according to several sources, there was a kind of a decline in commerce during this period of time, reducing the importance of the Vaishyas and other craftsmen. Coming to religion, art and architecture of the Gurjara Pratiharas. This age witnessed the rise of the Brahminical religion. Jainism and Buddhism was in decline. Gurjara Pratihara kings were also patrons of art, architecture and literature. As I have already mentioned, that poet, critic and dramatist Rajashekhara adorned the course of one of the Pratihara rulers by the end. Especially during the rule of Mihira Bhoja also there was remarkable developments in this field, notable sculptures, beautifully carved panels in the temples, majestic pillars, several important temples were built and all were patronized by the Pratihara monarchs. Coming to the conclusion, we can very well conclude that the Gurjara Pratihara as a regional power was one of the leading powers of early medieval Indian history. They were involved in the tripartite struggle for establishing domination over Kannauj. Constant friction with the Rashtrakutas and the Palas drained their resources and in the long run made them weak. But one of the interesting features about them was that they had a dream of establishing a single empire and unified India with its center around Kannauj, that is the upper Gangetic plain. They also offered steep opposition to Muslim infiltration in India and tried to resist the Arab invaders. Their military strength was empowered by their superior cavalry, one of the best according to the Arab writers. They built up efficient administrative system and were patrons of art, architecture and literature. So, along with the Palas and the Rashtrakutas, the Pratiharas also contributed largely to the development of early medieval Indian history. Thank you.